We now move on to a very interesting session on ship recycling, driving a safer and responsible ship recycling process. To discuss this, we have an eminent panel to include Dr. Anil Sharma, founder and CEO, Global Marketing Systems, GMS, Dr. Abdul Rahim, Corporate Officer and Regional Manager, Middle East and South Asia, Class NK. The session would be chaired by Mr. H.K. Das, IAS retired, former Secretary, Government of India, and former Chairman, Gujarat Maritime Board. Mr. Das began his service in the districts of Saurashtra, Gujarat during the initial part of his career. He is the longest serving district collector and district magistrate. He worked in the districts of North Gujarat, received the Best District Collector Award in 1991. He further worked as CEO of Gujarat Maritime, also as Chairman and Principal Secretary of Port and Transport for a long time, from 2003 to 2010. In 2013 to 14, he handled the additional portfolio of Chairman GMB and Additional Chief Secretary, Port and Transport. He was Additional Chief Secretary, Forest and Environment, and retired as Secretary, Government of India. After retirement, the PM appointed him as the National Commission for Denotified Tribes, and recently he's been appointed as Chairman, State Environment and Pact Assessment Authority, Gujarat. Over to you, Mr. Das.
Yeah. I think there is some problem, or
we can hear you, sir.
Yeah, I think the visuals are missing. There is some problem, it seems. Okay. Okay, let me start without loss of time. I extend a warm welcome to all the participants, all stakeholders in this India Maritime Conference, especially the dignitaries, speakers, and the panelists. And I must welcome and thank the organizers, Informa Markets, for taking a very brave initiative at the time when entire globe is fraught with this COVID-19. Friends, I have the great advantage and privilege of working in this sector for a very long time. When I saw the ship recycling from 2003 to 2013, I saw a fundamental difference. In 2003, this Supreme Court, with the report of Professor M.G.K. Menon, first time gave a direction how to go for safe and responsible shipbreaking in India, especially in Gujarat, that is in Alang. Now again in 2013, when I saw that the ship recycling code was in preparation or launched by Government of India, in these 10 years, I saw the kind of tension, the struggle that was going on between the industry and the environment lobby. If you ask an industrialist what are his concerns, the industry will definitely say, number one, there has to be growth and progress in the industry. There has to be a comparative advantage vis-a-vis the competitors in the different countries, and the economics or the profit margin must improve, and it must be sustainable. But friends, all the concerns which I mentioned for the industry now got a big challenge with the coming of the Basel Convention. And you know what has happened, that how to ensure these standards of safety, health and environment, what would be the cost attached to it? The challenge was so big, everybody was in disarray, and there was a lot of feeling of uncertainty as much as the risk. But today, I'm happy that Informa Markets has taken up a subject which is driving a safer and responsible ship recycling. The word is safer and responsible. It attaches importance to safety, more safety, and responsibility. How the responsibility has come and how this should be executed or implemented, are something that today we'll be discussing about. And we have very eminent panels. I'll introduce them. Before that, let me tell you, if you want a responsible ship recycling, what is required is regulations. What is required is technology. What is required is, investment, whether from the government or from the private sector. It requires government support or initiative. And then the management process must change of ship recycling. All these issues will be discussed by our panelists. We have a very eminent speakers today. One of them is Dr. Anil Sharma, who is the founder and CEO of Global Marketing Systems. Now he is based in Dubai. The interesting part is that he started his career as an academician. From there, he moved to business. He's a leader in the global ship recycling community. I'm sure with his involvement and commitment, today we'll get the best of ideas and initiatives that the industry had to take. He has been for 11 years, Lloyd's list has ranked him, Dr. Sharma, among the 100 most influential people in the industry. And how to transfer the ship recycling standards has been the major theme of all his speeches. Today, we'll be very happy to welcome him and ask him to present his paper and then make his remarks before we go to the next stage of discussion. Thank you. I welcome and request Dr. Anil Sharma to take the floor.
Thank you very much.
Just a minute, Mr. Das, can you just move a little so that we can see your face a bit more clearly and
Okay.
Yeah. Or you can move your system a little far, or you can.
Okay. Now I could also see there are some technical problem. Now I could see all of you also.
Yeah, a little more behind if possible.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, sir. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. Yes, that's better, sir. Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Anil Sharma, you can carry on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Das, for that glorious introduction. And thank you, Padma. I like your attention to detail. I've been focusing on every element. So thanks for having me up here. Mr. Das, as I was listening to you, since you have been involved with ship recycling for a very long time, I have been involved with the industry for about 27 years. It reminded me just before this pandemic, I was at a conference in Tokyo, and Dr. Martin Stofford, who's a British eminent economist and previously head of Clarkson Research, he said, when I'm coming here to Japan, I remember coming to Japan about 30 years ago, and at that time, the Japanese shipbuilding industry was known as had the three Ds, deltas. And the three Ds stood for dirty, dangerous, and depressing. And I was sitting in the audience and I was thinking, this is what the people think about the ship recycling industry, the three Ds, dirty, dangerous, and depressing. So that's the Japanese shipbuilding industry thing about, according to Dr. Stafford, about 30 years ago. And about 30 years ago, I think this is what the reputation was about, ship recycling. And none of us were very proud of it, but that was the good option at that stage. What I find today is that the reality is totally different. Especially in the last 10 years, you mentioned about the regulation and the Hong Kong Convention, and we'll discuss that. The industry has totally made a big change to the way it was and what it is today. What I'm very, very happy to say is that with the help of the IMO, with the help of Japan, the Japanese Ship Owners Association, the Class NK, Norway, various other ship owners, and of course the yards, India has become the world's #1 and the biggest recycling destination for green ships. If you look at the numbers, 1/3 of the global fleet that is recycled every year is recycled in India. And India today has become really the torchbearer for sustainable ship recycling. So I'm very proud of this. This was the first year last year was the first year when we looked at the ships sold, 100% of the ships sold by GMS in India were to green yards, which we are very proud of that, the progress made. Some of the features about this industry, it's an annual turnover of about $5 billion every year. And so that's a significant industry in the global stage. So far, I think since the industry has been formed, more than 8,000 ships have been recycled. I was looking at the number my team in India sent me, saying that's equals to about 65 million tons of steel that we have procured from recycling ships. And 65 million tons of steel is about 8,500 Eiffel Towers. So that's a big number of steel that is being recovered from India. It is today the best destination, as I said, for sustainable ship recycling. And the best thing about India is it provides the best combination of value and sustainable shipping. What it means by value is there are yards in Europe and other parts of the world talking about sustainable ship recycling, but that means these are yards that are offering 10%, 20% of the residual value of a vessel. End of the day, every ship after 20, 25 years, 30 years has a residual value. And in order to be part of the circular economy, you need to have responsible recycling, but you also need to add value to the ship owners or to the asset. It's not a liability. And India offers, the best combination. The second in line would be Turkey. And India offers, I think, about 80% more price today for the same asset than a yard in Turkey would offer. So I think it's an extremely important component in the whole shipping model. India is also the best destination for highly complex and high value assets. If you talk about offshore units, semi-subs, drill ships, LPGs, LNGs, stainless steel tankers, the destination to go is India, because the yard owners in India have really developed that competency to a level that they can do these extract, not only recycle these vessels safely, but extract great value. So why is India so good in all of this? I think if you talk about sustainable anything, it has the 3 R's, reduce, recycle, reuse. Of course, we cannot talk more about reduction, but we definitely do very well the 2 other R's, which is reuse and recycle. And so that creates great value to the circular economy. So that's a little bit of introduction. I didn't want to take more time. And I think we'll discuss more during a Q&A. So thank you for that.
Okay. Dr. Sharma, is there a presentation from John Chaplin?
Yeah, thanks for saying that. So I think what I will introduce is John Chaplin. John is our Director of Communications, and he has a few, to go a little bit further into the whole area of sustainable recycling. So John, if you can do that, please.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. I hope you can all hear me. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a really great pleasure to be with you today. Thanks for the opportunity. We actually have a short 3-minute video just to show you, which deals directly with the topic of this panel discussion. And after that, I'll spend about 5 minutes describing the situation from our perspective, and then I'll hand back to the panel. So please just bear with me while I get the video up and running. Right, hopefully you can see that.
Climate change is the existential crisis of our time. The natural resources like iron ore and steel are in scarce supply. As a ship offshore owner, ineffective recycling practices lead to alarming and prolonged effects on humans and the environment. Retiring a vessel is fraught with pain points. A complex series of rules and regulations around the environmental impacts and working conditions at recycling facilities complicate your decision-making process. Your capital providers face pressure both from external stakeholders and compliance with their own environmental, social and governance (ESG) policies. What you need is a trusted and credible partner to take care of the process for you and provide a customized end-to-end solution. Introducing the Sustainable Ship and Offshore Recycling Program from GMS. An end-to-end solution to ensure your ships are recycled safely in an environmentally sound and sustainable way. We at GMS understand that sustainability via circular economy is the key, and through effective recycling practices, it would lead to a more sustainable planet. For 3 decades, GMS has been a global leader in the ship recycling industry, with offices and representatives in all major shipping and ship recycling locations. We understand the DNA of ship recycling. Our highly qualified in-house supervisory team of specialized experts with PhDs have supervised recycling of over 100 vessels and conducted over 50 IHM surveys. Our expert advisors will help you in preparation of the inventory of hazardous material and gap analysis, selection of an appropriate recycling yard through audits, evaluation of the ship recycling facility plan, preparation of ship and offshore recycling plan, risk assessment including emergency preparedness and response plan, management of hazardous waste from identification, marking, segregation, storage and disposal measure. Dedicated recycling supervision team ensuring compliance as per HKC standards, qualitative and quantitative data collection, periodic reports to ship and offshore owners, assessment of carbon footprint of the complete recycling process. GMS SSORP has been vetted, accepted and recommended by leading ship owners and recognized by leading shipping publications. With the resources and experience you need, you can rely on us for our proven leadership and knowledge in getting the job done. Over 4,000 employees have been trained directly by our team in recycling locations across the globe in more than 170 free safety awareness sessions. SSORP simplifies the vessel recycling process, making it cost efficient and alleviating all your pain points. So partner with us and let us show you what SSORP can do for you.
Good. Hope you all saw that. I think that really helps to explain the process that that SSORP are involved with. I think we'll now have a quick run through of the a few key points just to set the scene for the panel discussion. Bear with me while I load the presentation. Good. I hope you can all see that. Ship recycling, driving a safer and responsible ship recycling process. That's what this is all about. Now, this is a quick regulatory overview. Many of you on this webinar call will be familiar with the regulations governing ship recycling, so I won't go through each in detail. The Hong Kong Convention, which will become the global standard, is now showing signs of progress, but is so far not yet ratified. I think it's worth emphasizing that the leading role that India with Japan, as Dr. Sharma said, has played in moving the Hong Kong Convention forward. The improvements and expertise developed in Alang can actually now be exported to neighboring countries, and this is already happening. I'm confident that the positive attitude towards HKC compliance shown by recyclers in Alang will be regarded by history as the single most important factor in getting the convention across the line. What you're looking at here is a list of classification societies and the number of compliance statements they've issued. These impressive figures provide a pretty clear indication of the direction of travel for recycling in Alang, and I think further illustrates that India is now in a great position to meet our clients' demands for responsible recycling. It is a fact that 85% of yards in Alang are now HKC compliant, and several yards hold multiple class certification. And if you have any lingering doubts about the trend towards green cycling, and there are doubters, please bear in mind that every single ship GMS sold to India last year went to an HKC compliant recycler. Dr. Sharma said it's a hugely significant milestone in the journey towards a global standard. GMS's green program is headed by my colleague, Dr. Anand Hiramath, and I hope the short video we showed explained the role and activities of that program. As you will see from this slide, they've played and continue to play a vital role in recycling supervision, worker training and education, actually not only in India, but in neighboring countries as well. And I would like to highlight the last point on this slide, that we now measure the carbon footprint of every vessel recycled under the SSORP banner. And on that topic, just a few words about ship recycling and the circular economy. Based on our Dr. Anand's calculations, the carbon cost of producing steel from ship recycling is approximately 1/3 of that from iron ore. It's quite interesting. And just to put that in context, in the last 10 years, approximately 2,800 vessels were recycled in Alang, which accounts to savings in emissions of nearly 20 million tons of CO2 equivalent GHG emissions, or in other words, power savings equivalent to 3 years of New York City's daily power consumption, which is quite something. Looking at the materials recovered during ship recycling, I think it's clear that this industry has been practicing a circular economy for many years, converting waste to energy, waste to employment, and waste to wealth. This slide, I believe, clearly illustrates and demonstrates our industry's circular economy credentials, and this will be taken into account by vessel owners with very tough ESG requirements to meet. So just to sum up a few key takeaways, India is leading the way and the world in Hong Kong Convention compliant ship recycling. Clearly, the number of ships being sold for green recycling is increasing and will continue to. Ship and offshore owners, believe me, are under growing pressure from their cargo clients, their banks and their investors to recycle responsibly. And of course, I would say the green recycling services offered by our SSORP really do represent the future for this industry. So thank you very much. I'm going to hand back to the panel, hopefully, and you can take it from there, if that's okay. My screen has frozen.
Dr. Sharma, would you like to add anything?
No, thank you. I think I would.
Okay. Now, I think we invite Dr. Abdul Rahim to continue the dialogue. And let me introduce Dr. Rahim. He is one of the most resourceful person in the area of shipbuilding, and he started his career from the Cochin shipyard and moved globally to various large number of cities in the world, and he got the best of his education from various universities, including Hiroshima University. And he has not only the experience of shipbuilding, but also he has been very influential and very, very positive about the classification and the SOC, Statement of Compliance, which his company does. He is the regional head of this class NK company, and I'm sure with his contribution, today's deliberation will be more richer and will get to know many things which the industry is likely to benefit. Thank you. Now I'll invite Dr. Abdul Rahim to make his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Dash. So let me upload my presentation. Now, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. And following the presentation by the speech by Mr. Dr. Sharma and his colleague, Mr. Chaplin, I would briefly introduce about the yard certification in compliance to Hong Kong Convention. As you know, Class NK is a classification society, and we, excuse me, we certify yards based on Hong Kong Convention. Well, the Hong Kong Convention, it was adopted in 15th May 2009. It's actually for the safe and environmentally sound recycling of ships. adopted by IMO. And if you briefly look at the ratification status, it will enter into force 2 years after fulfilling 3 requirements. That's on the left side. You can see the 3 requirements. Just a minute. Yeah. Not less than 15 states signed without reservation, and that part is complied. 17 states already ratified it, signed it. The fleet of signing states is not less than 40% of the world's merchant shipping GT percentage, and that is now close to 30%, another 10% to go. Then the maximum annual recycling volume of the signing states during the preceding 10 years constitutes not less than 3% of their gross tonnage. And currently that stands at 2.5%, but we are slowly inching up. You're not sure when it will be. Maybe I presume maybe within a couple of years, the convention will enter into force. And out of the 17 states, notably, we have India, Japan, and Turkey. I think possibly once Bangladesh or China exceeds, possibly we will reach the threshold of ratification. Now, what is the aim of this Hong Kong Convention? It is aimed to ensure that when a ship is recycled or when a ship is scrapped, it does not pose any unnecessary risk to human health, safety, and environment. So right from the beginning, when the ship is being built, all the equipment and material for construction is to be identified, and if it contains any hazardous materials, they are to be controlled. And while the ship is in operation, the inventory is maintained. And if there are any additions or deletions while the ship is in operation, say for example, you are changing one particular motor that contains hazardous material and replacing it with something else, then the inventory needs to be updated. And finally, when the ship is recycled, it is to be done in a way without threatening the health of the people and environment. So what we do is we carry out technical verification of ship recycling facilities and issue statement of compliance in line with Hong Kong Convention. So Class&K has issued a guideline for ship recycling facilities in 2016, which incorporates the necessary IMO guidelines. That is MEPC Resolution 21063. Then Class&K alone cannot do this, because we want all parties involved to take their share of burden in making sure that the Hong Kong Convention is met. So for example, the equipment manufacturers, they have to develop the material declaration and suppliers declaration of conformity to make sure that if some component is having hazardous materials, that is properly listed. Then for the shipbuilders, they have to develop the inventory of hazardous materials for new ships. And for ship owners, to develop IHM for existing ships and maintain and update the IHM during operation if there is any change in the equipment or machinery. And the ship recycling facilities, they need to develop ship recycling facility plan. And also whenever they are recycling a ship, they need to develop a ship recycling plan for that particular ship. Now let me briefly explain about the process of issuance of a statement of compliance. It has 5 steps. First, someone has to monitor the entire dismantling process of one or more ships. It's perhaps by a third party, and prepare a monitoring report and submit it to class. Then once the monitoring report is found satisfactory, the ship recycling facility is to submit an application form along with the ship recycling facility plan. Then the class will examine the ship recycling facility plan so as to make sure that it complies with the Hong Kong Convention based on the IMO guidelines. Now, once that step is cleared, a site inspection is carried out by Class&K surveyors to check that the procedures within the ship recycling facility plan are actually taking place in the facility And this is done by interviewing, document check, and site observation during the audit. And once everything is met, finally we issue the statement of compliance to ship recycling facility. And please bear in mind, the whole process takes anywhere from maybe 1 to 2 years, depending on the preparedness of the yard. Because we have recently found a couple of cases where the yards approached us and they said they are going to recycling ship. They need the HKC compliance certificate next week. We told them, sorry, we can't do that. You need to go through the whole process. Then only we can issue the the statement of compliance. Now, there are two key aspects, as I mentioned before. One is worker safety and health, and the next one is environment. First, when you're showing the worker health and safety, we need to have key personnel in each yard who are identified to deal with any items that are related to health and safety. Then you need to do an assessment of the job hazard. Then prevention of adverse effects to human health. This is of paramount importance. So for each stage, you need to have certain procedures such as safe for entry and safe for footwork procedures. Then the drums, containers, and pressure vessels, as and when they come from the ship, they have to be properly identified and properly stored and disposed of. Then prevention of falling from heights. So for example, one typical example is to put a guardrail, excuse me, and then make some visible things so that people don't fall off. Then gear and equipment of rigging and materials handling. Then, of course, PPEs like gas detector, helmets, and others. Then emergency preparedness and response plan should be there in each yard, because you never know when the emergency occurs, especially in ship recycling yards where, as Dr. Sharma mentioned, it is a 3R industry, or rather a 3K industry. In Japanese, they call it Kiken Kitanei, and I don't remember the third word. Okay. And then coming to the environmental compliance, the environment has to be constantly monitored, the air, the water, and the land. Then you have to manage the hazardous materials in an environmentally sound manner, especially the hazardous materials such as asbestos, PCBs, ozone-depleting substances, paint and coatings, excuse me, hazardous liquids, residues and sediments, and heavy metals, and others. Then prevention of adverse effects to the environment. So, for example, if you have oil-tainted block, then when you are dealing with it, you have to make sure that the oil doesn't get out of the area and go into the water or sand around. So you have to be careful about spill prevention, control, and the countermeasures. Then stormwater pollution prevention arrangements you need to have. Then debris prevention and control, because when you cut out the blocks, debris can fall and you have to control it. Then you have to properly report the incidents and spills that is likely to happen in a yard. Now, if you look at the statement of compliance milestones, the first SOC in the world was issued to a yard in China in 2012. Then South Asia's first statement of compliance was issued in India in 2015. And then we have added SOC in Turkey in 2017. And of late, one yard in Bangladesh has got statement of compliance from Class K. So these are the total number of SOCs that we have. Class K has issued and currently valid. In India, 46 yards has been given SOC, Turkey 3 and Bangladesh 1. Of course, we have did a couple of yards in China and Japan as well, but we need to verify it periodically at almost every year. And when they are not complying, we have to take them out of the list. In China, because China banned the foreign ships from going into the yards there for recycling. And in Japan, the process has been taken over by the Japanese government. Now in Bangladesh, what we have done is, because compared to India, Bangladesh is in a very, very initial stage. I should say in India, the ship recycling has almost matured, thanks to all the parties and also thanks greatly to GMS for their initiative in educating the people there, in bringing ships to the green yards. So in Bangladesh, the government wanted to do this. So the Bangladesh Ministry of Industries, along with IMO, has approached Class and K to develop a roadmap to help the ship recycling facilities in Bangladesh to comply with the Hong Kong Convention. So what we did is we did site investigation and gap analysis of 6 recycling yards in 2019. And based on that, we prepared a guidelines for ship recycling facilities as to what key improvements needs to be done to reach Hong Kong Convention compliance in maybe 4 years, because the Bangladesh government has kind of issued an ultimatum telling that the yards has to get HKC compliance, otherwise they will go out of business in 5 years. So it is up to the yards to get the Hong Kong compliance. So there's a compelling need for the yards to get it, and the government is, I think, a little strict on that one. And these are the 6 yards: 2 top yards, 2 medium yards, and 2 low quality yards that we have done to make this. And this is the first recycling yard in Bangladesh that we did in 2020. As you can see here, this yard is pretty clean and neat, and 1 gas cutter is operating under supervision of another supporter, and an ambulance owned by the recycling facility standby, and there is also 1 doctor at the site in case of any emergency. And while doing the audit, we are interviewing the workers to know how much they know about all the processes and safety measures. And this is 1 typical example of a demonstration of the evacuation drill from the yards. So once the whole process is completed, we have issued them with the statement of compliance. So what we do is we keep on encouraging safe and environmentally sound ship recycling through third-party verification of ship recycling yards around the world. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Dash.
Thank you, Dr. Rahim. Very excellent presentation. Dear friends, we have heard 2 eminent speakers and saw the presentations and this video clipping about responsible ship recycling. Let me sum up in a few points what our eminent speaker spoke. Number 1, when we heard Dr. Sharma, I am quite pleased that he said about India's role for adding value, the best value in ship recycling. He also talked about trusted and reliable partnership to achieve this. Then he also talked about the advice that this company can render for planning, for segregation, for storage and disposal of these materials from the ship that is after recycling to be received. One interesting with that, he has brought out a book, the Green Handbook, which would be very useful to this fraternity. They can use it for ship recycling, and it would be very, very interesting to do that. And I'm also quite impressed by the data that he has given about the carbon footprint in comparison to the conventional way of extracting steel per ton, and that is extracted from the ship recycling yard. It's a very, very useful data, and can be useful to understand the basic role that ship recycling industry can contribute for environmental protection in the country. He talked about, the presentation also included the various materials that can be recovered and reused. He talked of 3R: reduce, reuse and recycle. At least reuse and recycle, these are the themes on which the recyclers can really work on that. And I compliment for his presentation. In fact, it would be a very useful and important one for most of the stakeholders in this industry. Dr. Rahim started with the Class NK approach, how to implement this Hong Kong Convention. The Hong Kong Convention is the blueprint on which in 2019 Government of India has brought out the new Act of Recycling. this is going to be the background, the basis of regulation on which India's ship recycling will take place or base. Friends, he talked about also this, the green certification process, the statement of compliances, and what preparation the recyclers have to do, and what process have to be followed in this issuance of SOC, as well as this safety of workers and health, what should be looked at. So also the emergency preparedness measures in the event of some emergency in the yard, as well as he talked about basically this environmental compliance that all the ship recyclers have to keep in mind. One of the both of the presentation have been very, very useful, and I'm sure the audience will understand and appreciate that. If they have any questions, anything that they have in mind, perhaps with that we can start the next part of this presentation today. Friends, here I must say, before I could open the floor for questions and answers and discussions further, 3 important landmarks have taken place. This EU SRR 2018, it has its earlier draft also. At the same time, this act that Government of India has brought in 2019, and the need and necessity of green certification of the yards, the 3 things will perhaps bring the new dynamic change that is required to be done and getting into the new era of ship recycling. I congratulate the organizers for having chosen very important, salient, issues for discussion today. I may not repeat them, but if on each of these issues, if anybody has any contribution to make from our audience, we'll welcome that and carry out the discussion through the queue. Hence, anybody would like to begin with or ask any questions?
Sir, we have a question from the audience, but can you ask the panelists to talk about some of these points about role of FDI and all those things? Because we have, as of now, the panelists, the audience have just come up with the questions. I think if we can ask the panelists to talk about some of these areas, that would be better. One question come up with, yeah.
Okay. We talked about one of the issues could be this, how to get into this new era of recycling and how exciting it is to go into this vibrant industry of ship recycling. But the main important issues, even also we talked about the upcoming regulations also have been covered in the presentation. But what is most important today is how this foreign investment, direct investment, or public-private partnership or private investment can come in this sector of recycling, and how the new technology can transform the sector. This is where we like to discuss, and I invite both the eminent speakers, one after another, to give their presentation or a point of view.
If I may start with this, Mr. Das, I mean, to me, especially with the Indian context, the Indians, if you look at what we do in the whole shipping or maritime area, we are very good with our maritime community, which is very competent crew and crew training and so forth. We have started development and investments in ports and infra, which is also a great investment. We may have not invested as significantly into the ship owning part or in ship repairs or in shipbuilding. Those 3 sectors, I think, are relatively, we can see, less investments there. Of course, India's, if you look at India GDP, I've seen forecasts anywhere from 6 to 9%, and one of the fastest growing nations. So the demand for energy and gas and also commodities, it's going to be major. So that's the India in the maritime. I heard some of the earlier panels talking about transshipments and logistics and so forth. The way I'm looking at is all that thing that is connected in shipping and offshore, that is, every asset has a residual value. at some stage it has to be recycled. And as long as we provide a very sustainable way of recycling and adding value to that assets, it creates a very potent model for the shipping community. What I mean by that is, today, in spite of all this regulation and progress and all that, not in spite, because of that, you can still, for a VLCC, an Indian buyer might still pay about $23–24 million. That's a lot of money to pay for a 25 or a 30-year-old VLCC. I know at some stage there were new buildings that were built at about 72–74 million. Okay, not anymore. And so now, if you look at the life cycle of this VLCC, if you're going to spend 75 million to build and you can take a residual value of 20, that's $50 million to earn in 25 years. That's a compelling case. If you reduce this value to 5 million, it's a different model now. So people don't understand what we mean by all this. And then thanks to its credit goes to, class and owners and including we play a small role, and Dr. Hiramat, that is one of our person down, they work very hard to create the sustainability part of it. So now comes the investments. Where do we do in investments, and where does the public-private partnership comes into play? As always, it begins with infrastructure. I mean, one of the challenges Indian yards have is they're relatively small and they're on leases. You have been at one stage chairman of GMB, you're aware of this. Ideally, if India has to take the next leap forward in technology, we can talk about either going with a dry dock method, which the Chinese have tried about recycling. Some of the yards are still espousing that method. Or we are talking about developing the infrastructure, which is what we call the beaching method, which even the Turkish use it, except the Turkish yards call it landing method because they have put a slipway instead of a beach. So if you develop that infrastructure, what does it mean? Connectivity by rail, road, whatever it is, of all the goods and materials. Larger yards, which can recycle at a time 6 to 12 ships at a time. You're certainly creating economies of scale that this industry needs. And one of the reasons FDI has not come in yet is because if FDI is going to come in, it requires, larger scale investment. In the smaller yards where they can recycle 1 ship at a time or 2 ships at a time, is not big enough investment or big enough, a venture to go and attract FDIs into ventures like that. So I think if we start with large yards and partnerships with the government in that area, that's going to be a big step moving forward in the development of ship recycling.
Okay.
If I may add the technology,
Dr. Rahim?
If I may add from the technology viewpoint,
Yeah.
Technology has a real good part to play in ship recycling because we use some of the technologies, but the cutting edge technologies may be a little difficult to be applied in ship recycling industry because of the cost implications. I think a couple of yards have tried laser cutting because it can cut much faster, or even water jet cutting, so that the fire hazard is eliminated. But these are very costly, and it is difficult to sustain it. So in that case, the cutting edge technology may not be there, but some of the technologies are currently being used. And now coming to FDI, I think my understanding is some of the major ship owners are even considering maybe investing in their own yards, for example, in Alam, so that they can recycle their ships straight away. They can bring it to the yard and do that. So the only thing is that we have to create a good ecosystem to invite them to India or to Alam, or for that matter to any recycling areas around the world. And once that ecosystem is in place, then I don't know any other reason why they should not come and invest in recycling yards in India. Over to you. Thank you.
Okay. Padma, you would like to
Yes.
Are any other issues to be addressed?
Yeah, one more is that how can end of life shipment and regulation improve the shipping industry? End of ship management and regulation.
Okay, good.
How does it give back to the shipping industry?
Yes.
Dr. Sharma has already touched upon it, but
Okay. Our speakers would like to, both of them would like to add anything further?
Yeah, I think we had a slide that John showed about various regulations, EU ship recycling regulation, the waste regulation is called waste shipment regulation. It was also known as the Basel regulations and so forth. So these are all global IMO regulations. Of course, India has its own regulation. I think Mr. Dash started about how India did a very good job with that, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Menon, who led this whole issue. So if you go back and look at how this whole regulation started in ship recycling, actually it originated by the Supreme Court of India, and which was then adopted a great part of it by the IMO in the creation of the Hong Kong Convention, and then from the Hong Kong Convention it started flying. Because I don't know if the audience realizes, Hong Kong Convention is actually not legally binding. It's not into force. It has been ratified with nations that Dr. Ames mentioned, but it has not come into force. So in essence, it's a voluntary guidelines that IMO has. It's not mandatory guidelines. So EU decided that they need some kind of regulation until IMO comes into force, and that's why they came into the EU ship recycling regulation. The unfortunate situation of the EU ship recycling regulation is it has created a perception in the world that EU ship recycling regulation is better than Hong Kong Convention. To me, it isn't. There are maybe two issues. One is the downstream waste management issue. That's really what sets apart the EU ship recycling regulation. But majority of the things are from Hong Kong Convention. So it is creating a little bit of this argument in at least the Western world for European owners. We know which regulation to apply. Fortunately, large owners, including Maersk, which is the world's largest owner, has accepted that they will recycle their ships in compliance with Hong Kong Convention, and they send their ships to India. Certain major banks, they have also taken that same position that we will accept Hong Kong Convention guidelines. So these regulations exist. I think the issue is mainly when you recycle a ship is issue of safety and environmental responsibility. And these two areas, the Indian yards are doing wonderfully well. I mean, you're talking about 85% of the yards now that have been certified by various by IX class societies. So it's not just the yard owner saying, hey, I'm good. There are audits that are going in. And these are not easy audits. Dr. Rahim showed that Bangladesh has been trying this for several years, except for one yard. The other yards are really struggling. I know a few weeks ago, they were trying to look at the other yard. So, and Pakistan, I don't even know where they are. They're probably not even started. So these are the three major segments. So China is out. So it's really Turkey and India are the two lead players, of which India is the biggest player. So I think India should be really proud of this. To me, ship recycling is an industry of the future. It's not an industry of the past. And it's very sustainable. I'm going to make one quick comment so the audience understands. I think because there is so much, when I started my little presentation, I said the three things, dirty, dangerous, and depressing. That part has been publicized so heavily that even amongst some of the Indians, we feel this is not a green industry, and which is very, very sad. Because this is an extremely green industry. And I was at one of these Harvard programs, and when we were around the room, the CEOs were introducing themselves. People were so impressed with the industry I was in because they had not heard any of the negative stuff. To them, this is the industry of the future. And I really was surprised because when you read the press, now especially even some of the Indian press, the pictures you see are negative. So I think this is where this industry doesn't get the credit it so richly deserves. And I hope these conferences like this start changing that mindset. We have second generation ship owners yard owners who are coming in with MBAs and very sophisticated mindset in India that are developing these yards. So I think we need to support them.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Sharma.
There are a lot of questions have come in.
Okay.
Yeah. If we suppose 100 ships are recycled in a particular period, for how many ships will this recycled steel be enough to build back similar size or type of ships? Can the same grade of steel A/AH, etc., be used for any other purpose after necessary processing? Who are the biggest buyers of steel from Ala?
Okay, so I can answer the first two parts.
Yes, Dr. Rahim, please.
Yeah, there is, once you recycle the steel from the ship, generally that is not allowed use in new building ships, basically, because the class doesn't allow that. But of course, you can use that if it is again properly treated, surface treated, and the thickness requirements are okay, then it can be reused. And who are the biggest buyers of steel from Alang? Possibly the steel rolling mills, they may be using it. And the requirement in India, that is the what do you call, the need for ship recyclers to sell the steel to the steel mills are not as profound in India as in Bangladesh. Because in Bangladesh, about 70% of the raw material of the steel mills come from recycled steel from the recycling yards. So they have a very compelling need to sustain that one. Whereas in India, we have other sources, and the percentage of steel that they are getting from the recyclers may be less.
Yeah. Dr. Rahim, thank you. In fact, the steel requirement that is made from the ship recycling yard in India, and if you compare with Bangladesh, I was told 65% of the steel requirement of Bangladesh comes from the recycle or
Yes.
from this recycling from the ships.
Yes.
Whereas in India, it had to compete with this melting scraps as well as this conventional steel that is available in the market. So basically it goes to this nearly, in my time, there are 84 re-rolling mills. They have to absorb all the steel that you have to get from the ships. Yes. Now the number must have changed, but nevertheless this steel also compared to this conventional steel is cheaper, and it is used for various purposes in this community, and even compared to the different steel that is available in the market, it is the Olang steel that is ruling the roast in Govindgarh. So therefore there is a huge demand, and it is being used. Of course, the recycling requirement, recycling approach today is not just ended in ship dismantling or breaking. It goes to this end. It goes to the end. So therefore, recycled steel also is under observation, how environmentally it is safe.
Yeah. A couple of questions from one from Captain Achyutan. If can we identify the synergies between shipbuilders and recyclers, keeping the 3 R's in the convention?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. I think Dr. Sharma can answer.
I will answer from the commercial standpoint because I'm not an engineer, Dr. Rahim is. I do feel it is, yes. In fact, I'm very keen to see the ship repair. Ideally, I would like to see a facility which can handle all three: ship building, ship repair, and ship recycling. Because there is, I believe, synergies between these three that can be exploited, especially for ship repairing. The steel that comes, steel prices are going through the roof. And depending how much steel renewal we are talking about in a vessel and where the steel is, maybe class will not approve it. And I think Dr. Rahim can address to what extent you can approve that kind of steel. for repair job, but depending on the age of the vessels. But machineries, for example, spares. We have a lot of owner friends, including ourselves, which we own some ships. And most of the spares come from Alang. And those who have been to Alang, they can see all the trading shops that handle every aspect that comes out of a ship. One of the reasons why India, even within India, other states have tried to develop ship recycling, it does not work this, because I think Mr. Das said earlier that you require the whole ecosystem around it. It's not just the yard itself, but all these traders that add so much value. We have at least have no more than 100 people from overseas who have visited. They all come back in awe. I have a friend who's a big hotel owner. I will not use his name because I don't know if it's a big chain in India. And he just came to Alang and he was so impressed. And the last hotel he built, he took all the furniture, truckloads of furniture from Alang. And then he sent me the pictures and he said, look at this furniture. This is from Alang. I was shocked. Because in 3 of his restaurants, he has all Alang furniture. And I thought, I didn't realize Alang produces such nice furniture. So I think there is, to answer that question, is there a synergy? Yes. Prior to 2008, actually, I thought of, we even bought a land to come and invest in India to create this ship building, ship repair, and ship recycling. I was glad we stopped right before the crash in 2008. Otherwise, it would have been turned ugly for us. But you never know, maybe somebody else now comes in. Recently, I think the yard did get sold, the Reliance Naval Yard, and I don't know what the objectives are of the buyer, but that could also be a great place to do all three.
Yeah. In fact, if I could add, the synergy today is a sine qua non for the success of the industry, and the synergy has to be achieved by the ship recycler himself. Today, the act of ship recycling 2019 puts all the onus on the ship recycler, starting from the ship building to the end of ship management. All the synergy has been defined in the act itself. What happens, the ship builder must from the beginning had to give a certificate of the hazardous material or the toxic materials that it has. The owners as well as the cash buyers, they have to give this document to the ship recycler. And in fact, I have been told in many cases of ship breaking time, the representative of the ship owners, in fact, the representative of the building yard also were present to guide and ensure that the ship breaking takes place in an environmentally sound manner. So like this, this is by compulsion. A lot of things will be now happening through this intermediality of the act. And I must tell you that today, the Director General of Shipping would be the national authority to supervise and administer, unlike the Gujarat Maritime Board, to see that the starting from the IHM or the green passport down to marketing to this re-rolling mills and others or the end users, there has to be a stage-wise necessary approvals have to be given by this national authority, that is the DG Shipping. And competent authority perhaps would be the Gujarat Maritime Board to see that in the field level, the geographical importance of this shipyard had to maintain. So GMB had to ensure that this is done in a more eco-friendly manner.
From the class viewpoint, I just want to add that out of the 3 R's, that is reduce, recycle, and reuse, the recycling is permitted only for ship repair activities. New buildings, normally we don't allow recycled material. Yeah. And even for ship repair, when the recycled material can be used subject to certain conditions, certain testing. So it's on a case-by-case basis that we go about it.
Okay, Padma, any other question?
Yeah. The last question is, what is the broad difference in the requirements put forth by EU over the requirements of HKC? Is there a requirement of dry dock-based recycling instead of beaching as per EU convention? This is from Mr. Akshay Jain.
Yeah, so I will take that question. the EU convention doesn't specifically mention dry dock or slipway or beaching or anything. All they say is the intertidal zone is to be properly taken care of. So that is, I mean, many of the yards certified by HKC, especially in India, are, in my opinion, qualified for EU certification, but the EU is hesitating to do that based on certain pretexts. And one, they say, they will not straight away say it is beaching because that is not mentioned anywhere. But they say the downstream management or the hospital facilities and other reasons they are mentioning. So basically, HKC and EU are more or less the same, but EU is under tremendous pressure from certain NGOs and other parties to make sure that the beaching is kind of not approved, but not officially, but unofficially.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dr. Rahim. Perhaps a subtle difference in the convention, Hong Kong Convention, and the EU-SRR is that EU-SSR, I think, insists that the ship can be sent for recycling only to those yards which are green certified and they comply with these norms. Whereas this Hong Kong Convention has been talking about the plan, the yard planning, the process planning, as well as the submission of the IHM, the inventory of hazardous metal list has to be given to the ship recycler. So perhaps in complementarity, both would be more useful for more safer and responsible recycling. Regarding beaching and this float technology, even beaching also was questioned by many people, and they went to Green Tribunal. When Japan came with this proposal with Gujarat Maritime Board, they invested money here, and the modernization of this yard took place. That time somebody questioned how have they, the same people in Japan, they are talking about the docking method or floating method, how have they encouraged this beaching method in India, that is in Gujarat and along. So matter went to the Green Tribunal, but Green Tribunal also has now, by and large, now they have accepted. In their judgment, they have said, with improved beaching method, with all necessary checks and balances and technological applications, this method also can be used for ship recycling. Perhaps before we go for more foreign investment, more direct investment, more native investment for ship recycling, this beaching method with more care and caution perhaps can be the next possible method that will continue for some years.
Mr. Das, if I can add to that, please keep in mind, to me, any investment is the right kind of investment to the right kind of job. We can talk about, talking millions, but it's, what's the purpose? So beaching method, as I said, EU has approved yards in Turkey, and these yards in Turkey are doing pretty much the same thing as beaching method, right? I mean, the ship is coming and coming aboard the yard and beaching. So it's not different, except these guys are saying, the term is terminology, right? We are all used to different words of how to describe it. Landing, and it's not a error. So you can create slippage.
Paradeep जा रहा है ना? आप लोग कहाँ जा रहा है? Paradeep.
Can you please on mute?
Yeah. So I think that the beaching method is acceptable. The technology is and when you look at the way a ship is recycled at the yards in the lung, when they're HKC compliant, is basically they're using the floor of the yard as to drop something since they're not in the water, and then cranes putting it, and then also a lot of yards have backyards where they take material and take it to the backyards and recycle there. So I think the technology is there, but at the end of the day, that requires, Dr. Rahim said, I know I've been to Japan where one of the ship was tied, and I just I think it was earlier this week, the people from Japanese Ship Owners Association in my office, and they said they donated literally a vessel to this to test this water jet cutting. It was just too slow and really cost prohibitive. I had another gentleman in the office who was saying, I'm going to blow the ships away. And okay, you can blow the ship, but what are you going to do with all the steel? You're not going to recycle that steel or reuse that steel. So, I mean, I think it's a good technology for now. And when we talk about technologies, and I always have a clear feeling that if you look at a ship that is 10 years old and a brand new vessel, the difference in technology is not as big as you have in an automobile. A BMW of 10 years old and a 10 years old BMW today is very different. So it starts with the technology process is, are we talking about electronics? Are you talking about different combustion engines? Where do we take this technology, right? And our job in the recycling is to make sure there's the best combination of sustainable recycling practices combined with value. Because if you're a ship owner, Mr. Das, and I come to you and I'll say, I know your ship is worth 10 million, but to do a green recycling, I can only pay you 1 million or 2. You're gonna say, come on, take a hike. I need my 10 million for my ship. Maybe I will leave $500,000 to do a sustainable recycling. And so this is how I think India has done very, very well and provided this to the opportunity for the rest of the world.
Great, sir. So just one more thing. What government regulations for innovation in shipbuilding and recycling processes?
Will you repeat the question?
What government regulations for innovation in shipbuilding and recycling processes?
Government innovation.
Yes.
Okay, let me say a few things. State government, much before the regulations came, they started with giving the infrastructure required for the ship recycling yard in terms of roads, bridges, and drainage facilities, labor welfare center, labor training center, then the fire station, hospital, housing facilities, etc., like that. Then most important thing is facilitation in beaching of ships, because the intertidal zone, cutting a ship is the most dangerous thing. To facilitate the ship being drawn to the yard through winch technology, that is what the Gujarat Maritime Board started. Secondly, it started talking about impervious flooring, so that the groundwater will not be polluted. So impervious flooring of the yards were done, and with the Japanese joint venture project that we undertook, in fact, 73 yards have been completed in terms of impervious floorings. Then, it also indicated large size plots, so that bigger vessels can be brought and recycled here. Then, like this, many such initiatives have been taken, and taking policy gives many incentives to the recyclers in terms of financial incentives. Plus, they facilitate in terms of custom duty with Government of India, that with this Government of India for reduction of the custom duty, etc., so that it doesn't become very costly. Like this, many such initiatives have been taken by the Gujarat Maritime Board over the years. And the recent one, as I told you, the yard, modernization of the yards. And that apart, ensure that the personal protective equipments are given to all the laborers, and these mobile cranes, then gas-free, cutting. Gas-free cutting and like that. Too many such things are happening.
I think if I may add to that as well, for example, very quickly, for example, our SSORP head, Dr. Anand, is working with IIT Gandhinagar to come up with innovation in waste management technologies, because still small percentage of waste comes out of vessel. For example, disposal of mercury, for example. What's the best way to manage the disposal of that kind of waste, or even asbestos? So I think together with some of the universities, we have graduates now that are getting doctorate degrees in ship recycling, which was very strange to me. So every time I hear about something, we welcome that, or we give internship to students. So how we look at every aspect of the ship recycling process and say, at this stage, can we introduce technology? For example, John mentioned we measure 280 data points when we are recycling a vessel. And within these 280 data points, where technology can come in to assist. I think when we say technology, we think about computerizations, and maybe that has a role to play as well. But I think it's more incremental at this stage instead of revolutionary.
Yeah, you are very right. As one or to distinguish, the technology may not be very big or revolutionary, but small interventions also can bring safety and protection environment in a big way. So let me elaborate further for the benefit of the audience. First thing is the cleaning of ships and sanitization from toxic substances as well as this hazardous material. That is where the first step has to be taken in cooperation with the ship owners of the gas buyers. The recyclers have to do that. And then the gas detection system. Maximum fire takes place because of the gas fire. So gas detection systems and high power pumps to drain out the oil, that is also required. Then crane system, because earlier people are entering the ship and cutting page by page, stage by stage, and in fact, if there is a fire, if there is a calamity, they can't really get out of that. Now today, going for scaffolding outside the ship or mobile cranes, that is also adding to this safety factor. So this small technology can be used. As I told in the beginning, winch technology to draw it to the yard, that part, radiation detection, where they are doing already, they are using the smoke detection devices, etc. That is being useful for this radiation detection. Then that apart, videography, communication, seamless communication. So these are the things also Maritime Board has been doing, or has introduced that. Apart from this downstream waste management, we have got a TSDF, those metals which are to be incinerated. Now, in Olang itself, they are providing the facilities for this TSDF as well as other modes of disposal, including incineration. So like this, many such technological interventions can be done, and more can be done by investment also. To me, the scope of investment from the private sector is not limited to what I said. For example, one I am talking about, there is a need for an oil reception jetty, where the oil, drained or rather channelized from the tanks are stored and then disposed in a very environmentally sustainable manner. So also hospitals, medical facilities, education for laborers' children, training institute, then ambulance facilities, then expansion of TSDF, like this many such things.
Okay, sir.